Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed, whether that is reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, interviewing for a job, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language and country of origin, but here in Israel Modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover, or any other feedback you have. If you want to email us you can email us, email us at hebrew@nbn.org.il. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us in the chat window. You can also find all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh. You'll see a playlist with all of our previous lessons up there. This program doesn't work without your input. So we always want to hear what you want. As you see, we also make classes directly based on your requests. Those of you who are joining us live, we are at over 200 people here on Cafe Oleh, which is absolutely amazing tonight. And at the end of today's class, I'll not only tell you next week's class topic, but we have a very important and exciting update for you that we're going to tell you at the top of the hour when we finish class. So I promise we're going to finish at 9 o'clock. At that point, not only tell you next week's class topic, but also a very exciting update to Cafe Oleh. So with that, let's get started. Today, I said we're going to talk about sentence structure. Sentence structure is really important in any language, and especially when you're learning a new one. Because in Hebrew, we talk a lot about context, that there's a lot of context clues that aren't necessarily available in other languages, including languages that are your native tongues. But also when you're struggling to learn a language and at the same time using it in everyday applications like bills, news, nutrition labels, and so forth, context is going to be really important. So when we can take a step back and diagram sentences, we can also understand both what are the word order, what is the typical word order, and also when things don't seem like they're in order, at least where we can follow the right words to figure out the meaning of a sentence, because sometimes it's simply a matter of rearranging words. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to do it through a couple examples, and especially we're going to do it through some popular cultural examples. One I'm sure you're all familiar with in the last 129 days. And another one is a preview for next week. So with that, we're going to get started. If you have questions regarding this class, please write it in the Q&A box. If you have questions about anything else and you're joining us live on Zoom, please write it in the chat. But please limit your questions about this class to the Q&A. The transcript of the chat, I'll be sure to look on it afterwards. Let's get started. So to get started and to explain again, sentence structure and more importantly, word order, I'm sharing with you from one of my favorite websites ever, Wikipedia. This is a table of word order among languages of the world. When we say word order, they usually come with an S, an O, and a V. S stands for subject, object, O, V, verb, right? We're going to look at what that is in a second. But when you look at this breakdown, the vast majority of the languages of the world are in the first two categories. Subject, object, verb, which as you see is the English equivalent of cows, grass, eat. So first off, you know English doesn't belong to this, but a lot of major languages do. Bengali, one of the most spoken in the world, Hindi and Urdu, Turkish, and so forth. The category that English is connected to, subject, verb, object. Cows eat grass, right? That's how we speak in English. And you see a bunch of very familiar languages in this category, including what we study in this class, Hebrew. You'll also see next to it a cousin, Arabic. You'll also see in the next category that's only 9% of the world, verb, subject, object, eat cows grass, biblical Hebrew, There's also Classical Arabic and another Semitic language, Ge'ez, which is spoken in liturgical language in Ethiopia. But Biblical Hebrew is here. Anyone who has ever opened up a Hebrew Bible and read it in Hebrew, you know this is how the vast majority of these sentences are. It begins with a verb, subject, object. Vaidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, right? That first word is a verb, not a subject, right? And then it goes to the subject and then the object. Hebrew, as we're going to look right now, on the one hand is modern Hebrew, right? Meaning that it is a continuation of ancient and medieval Hebrew. So it draws on the grammar and syntax of the past, but it also is modern. And one of the most important things that's changed with regards to Hebrew, making it modern Hebrew, and we've talked about this a lot in past classes about what has changed and what went into creating what we call modern Hebrew, right, is the realities of the speakers of modern Hebrew or the potential speakers. And one of them is about word order. Let me show you what word order looks like. Sure. Okay. I took a super simple sentence, right, in order to diagram for you what it looks like. Okay. In modern Hebrew, just like in English, there are three major components of a sentence. The subject, in Hebrew it's called noseh, the verb, poal, and the object, musa. Okay. In a regular sentence, just like in English, as you see at the bottom, and that's why there's English here, the boy bought the cake. We can translate this literally into Hebrew. Hayeled kana et hauga. Okay, hayeled is the subject, kana is the verb, and et hauga is the object. In this case, we call it a direct object. Why is it a direct object? It follows immediately after the verb, and there are no prepositions. Et is used in Hebrew to before a direct object. Okay, and it's actually a definite direct object because it's kana et hauga. He bought the cake. It's not the boy bought a cake, which in modern Hebrew is still considered a direct object, right? It's the cake. So the boy bought the cake. Hayeled kana et hauga. We're doing well, right? We can translate this literally, and we talked last week about translation. As always, context is important. Here's a great sentence that goes both ways from English to Hebrew, Hebrew to English, no problems, right? We follow the exact same word order. You can follow along. I'll send you this slides as PDF. You can see color-coded what follows what. But what happens if we go back to that biblical Hebrew section, right? And if we follow what is in Tanakh, in the Bible, and in other ancient Hebrew and even medieval Hebrew, right? It said it was verb, subject, object. In Hebrew, that would correspond to kana hayeled et hauga. Okay. This sentence in Hebrew does make sense. If you were to say this, people would understand it. Why? So first off, it's understood. First off, kana is obviously the verb because there is no, number one, there is no noun that's kana. But second, we know that, and we know that the structure in Hebrew affords that. Hayeled and etauga. First off, et already gives us a big flag that says that anything that follows et has to be an object, right? That's the only function of et. Et is used before a direct object. It doesn't mean anything. It's simply an indicator that a direct object is immediately following, right? So because whatever follows et is the direct object, intuitively, I know that hayeled has to be the subject, okay? Because there is no et before it. Kana hayeled et hauga. This is how we read Hebrew. If you're coming from a religious background or you only know Hebrew from the Tanakh, this is how you would write sentences. Why don't we write like this anymore? Simple reason. You notice what's on this slide and not on the other one? The English. one of the changes that happened when modern Hebrew was being standardized at the turn of the 20th century was not just pronunciation rules and voweling rules and spelling rules, and we've gone through those lessons before, they're all up on YouTube, was also word order. You noticed on that timeline that graph I showed you from Wikipedia, that classical Arabic is included in the same category as biblical Hebrew, right? This is the way that in modern standard Arabic they speak, and in the Bible they speak. Verb, subject, object. The vast majority of Jewish immigrants, of Olim at the turn of the 20th century, who were coming into the land of Israel, were speaking in Indo-European language. The vast majority of Indo-European languages are subject, verb, object languages, right? Whether it's German or French or Spanish or many of the other Indo-European languages follow this order. Hebrew, both being flexible in and of itself, and we're going to look at more examples of that in a second, but also trying to incorporate all these olim into speaking Hebrew fluently and quickly, right, was able to bend the rules. And thus we went from this verb, subject, object to subject, verb, object. It's the reason why it was the idea was to make it easier for more people to understand Hebrew quickly, because the vast majority of immigrants at that time were also coming from Indo-European speaking countries, whether it was Eastern Europe, Western Europe, didn't matter. This made more sense to them. Hebrew is flexible like that. This works, and what also works in Hebrew is this, where you put the object at the beginning of the word, and then you play around with the order of the subject and the verb. את העוגה הילד קנה. את העוגה קנה הילד. Okay, what works here? First off, the et is a great anchor to understand what is the subject and the object. It will always help you, whether you understand the sentence or not. If you see the word et, and it's clear that it's et and not at, simply by its placement in a sentence, and also the context and other words around it, you are good to go, right? If I were to take out the vowels here, the dots and bars that indicate vowel sounds, I would know this is et, right? There is no sentence of atauga, you are the cake, to a woman. That might be a compliment to some people, but that's not the point of what we're talking about. Okay, this works in Hebrew both because of the et and also the way I just pronounce it, the inflection that you put on the sentence. Et ha'oga hayeled kana. Et ha'oga kana hayeled. If I put the emphasis on this word uga, right, it's understood not only it's the object, but it's also, for lack of a better term, it's the topic of this sentence, right? Yes, it's the child or the boy who bought the cake. But what's important here in this sentence, by this structure, I'm emphasizing that it's the cake actually that's more important. Okay, I'm placing it at the beginning. I'm putting some extra emphasis on that. We also see this, by the way, in Hebrew, and we've talked about this a lot, why Hebrew loves the passive voice. This is a great reason why. Even though these sentences are all in active voice, passive voice would, again, push up the object as important. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways to structure a sentence. All we have to do is figure out the subject, verb, and object of each sentence, okay? The subject is the one doing the action. The object is the one who's receiving the action, okay? Best way, simplest way to think about it. If whenever you are in doubt while learning Hebrew, you come across a sentence you can't figure out, start diagramming the sentence, not translating at first, diagramming. What is the subject? What is the verb? What is the object? Everything else, adverbs, adjectives, prepositions, they will all fit in neatly into these once you figure out these 3 things. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 different options for a sentence with a subject, verb, direct object. What if it's an indirect object? And what is an indirect object? Remember we said hayeled kana et ha'uga, right? The boy bought the cake. What happens with an indirect object? An indirect object is simply when you put a preposition between the verb and the object, or more, let's say it, that's how we would say it in English. In Hebrew, it's that the object takes a preposition. Okay, so for example, the question, how would you ask someone in Hebrew, who are you speaking with? Well, first off, just like in what we say in proper English, that you don't end sentences with a preposition, the same rule applies in Hebrew, right? We would not say ata medaber imi. That's incorrect Hebrew. Instead, just as you see here, imi ata medaber, with whom are you speaking? Okay, so just like in English, we do that whom bit so that the preposition doesn't fall at the end of the sentence. Same thing in Hebrew. Imi ata medaber, ani medaber ita. Okay, ani, let's look at that second sentence first. Ani, I, the subject. Medaber, speak, the verb. Ita, ita is im ota, with her. Okay, this is ita is the conjugation of im, first person, third person singular feminine, with her. So if I want to say I speak with her, right? Ani, subject, verb, indirect object. This is an indirect object because it has a preposition before it, right? This could also ita ani medaber. Okay, or that's pretty much the only other way that could be. And you see that reflective in the question, where the indirect object comes first. Imi ata medaber, with whom do you speak? Okay, that's not just because it sounds better, just like in English, to have the preposition not come at the end of the sentence. It also is the way we ask questions in Hebrew, right? With whom are you speaking? Imi ata medaber. Okay, so indirect object, object. The point though is that you start recognizing the word order of sentences. It's important when you are trying to find further context in a sentence you don't understand, whether it's because the words you don't know or it's very convoluted. This is important. And why, again, am I going to emphasize this? We're going to look at the lyrics of two songs today. Now, poetry and songs always have a reputation for playing with word order, right? And Hebrew, because it's such a lyrical language and it's used so much in poetry, is very fluid with its word order in that respect. As much as this is the default of modern Hebrew, right? Subject, verb, object. Hayeled kana et ha'uga, the boy bought the cake. We're going to see examples specifically from music. Number one, because music is reflective of Israeli identity and society and how we use the language. But also it's reflective because oftentimes you're going to see this, where the object comes at the beginning of the sentence. And you're going to need to figure out on context clues, is the subject or the object? Et is there. What if et wasn't there? How else would I know that uga is the object and not the subject? One way to know would be how kana, the verb, is conjugated. Kana is conjugated masculine, not feminine. Uga is feminine, yeled is masculine, therefore yeled kana et uga, we know that the verb is related to the subject. Okay. If this is too complicated, don't worry. Number one, that's why I put it in color code, so you can go back and look at these different sequences and see it for yourself. But also, we're going to look at it in real-time application in the form of song lyrics. So with that, let me just pull up song number one, which I know many of you already know, but we're going to look at the structure of it in just a second. As soon as I can pull it up. There we go. Okay. Okay. So if that was complicated, we're going to look at it in real-time application right now. So many of you will know this song. We're going to listen to it in a minute, but first we're going to go over the lyrics to emphasize and illustrate what I was talking about in word order and why it's so important. In the last 129 days, there's been a number of different songs that have been written already about the war, but there's one song that is basically the unofficial anthem song of this war. It was actually written before the war started. It was written sometime in July or August when it was released by an up-and-coming artist named Yagel Ashuri. And the song is called Latzet Medikaon, to get out of depression. And he wrote this about his own personal mental and emotional health. And almost immediately after the events of October 7th, this song became a huge hit. It was trending, but it wasn't a big deal. October 7th had happened because the lyrics are all about getting out of depression, how all the feelings we felt on October 7th, and this song tried to give some answers to it. It became the unofficial anthem of the war in the sense of every moment you saw soldiers being reunited with their family after being called up to reserve duty, or getting a break from service, or doing something happy after such a terrible day, the soundtrack to those videos, whether it was on Instagram or Facebook or on the news, was this song. You're going to recognize the song the moment you hear it. You probably didn't listen to the lyrics. The lyrics are not only amazing, they illustrate how important word order is, and that you can focus on word order as you are engaging in something as beautiful, as heartfelt as this song. Okay, so we're going to go through the lyrics together. It starts off simple, classic word order, right? The ones that we expect to hear. Excuse me. There we go. אתם יודעים מה הדרך הכי טובה לצאת מדיכאון? Right? The first line of the sentence is, do you know the best way to get out of depression? And then the beginning of the song is answering that question. המשפחה, החברים, אולי לצאת לבילויים. Right? Family, friends, maybe to go out with for fun. שיחות עמוקות, שיחות של הנפש בלילה, deep conversations, soul-filled conversations at night. להתמודד עם שינויים, ההרגלים הישנים, to face or deal with changes, old routines. הנשמה במלחמה עם הקרמה. Soul is at war with karma, right? All of these lines are answering the first question. Makes total sense. It's not complete sentences, but it's all answering a question at the beginning. אתם יודעים מה הדרך הכי טובה לצאת מדיכאון? Do you know the best way to get out of depression? And based on his own experience / using this song as his own therapy, he's answering it. Family and friends, maybe going out for fun, deep conversations, dealing with changes in old routines, facing them, your soul is in a war with karma. And then comes the bridge, or not the bridge, it's the line before the chorus kicks in, right? Od yavo yamim tovim ani mavtiach. Big red flags should go off, because only the second to last word in this sentence is ani. Ani, we know, is I. I is the subject. Ani is the subject. If I was going to say me, as in the object, that's oti. But here it says ani, right? So already we see a flip of the sentence, right? If I was speaking in everyday Hebrew, just like I would in other languages, right? If we're doing subject, verb, object, it would be ani mavtiach od yavo yamim tovim. But instead, we're focusing on what's going to come, right? He's changing the word order to focus not on himself or even he promises, right? It's Od yavo yamim tovim ani mavtiach. Better days are coming soon, I promise, right? He wants to comfort you to know that better days are coming. Not that it's his promise. It's what I say is irrelevant. He's saying better days are coming. I happen to back that up by saying I promise. Okay. Od yavo yamim tovim. Again, it's emphasizing the object in both as it gets to the chorus, playing around with word order, just like we saw in those sample sentences before in the slides, to emphasize the object, not me and not my action, by promising you these days. These days are coming whether I promise it or not, he's essentially saying. Okay, a very Israeli vibe, by the way. When we say yeh beseder, it'll be okay. Same thing here. Better days are coming soon. Od yavo yamim tovim. Okay, remember he's writing this song in July. This song comes out in July, August of 2003, several months before the start of the war. Okay, and here comes the chorus. The chorus is where you need to watch out for the word order, and that's why I'm using this, not just because it's a beautiful song. It really plays with word order to emphasize the objects and to play around with us where we're focusing. Okay. גם בשעות החשוכות של הלילה, even in the dark hours of the night, תמיד יהיה כוכב קטן שיעיר לך. Again, תמיד יהיה כוכב קטן שיעיר לך. There will always be a small star that will light up for you. את עצמך, את הדרך הביתה. Okay, the emphasis, it's talking about you, but it's talking about you in the context of this little star, this kochav katan she, number one, ya'ir lecha, that will light up for you. What? Et atzmecha, yourself, and et haderech habaita. Hebrew is not as big on commas as English is. I am a comma junkie. I use commas all the time in my writing, probably violating all sorts of grammar rules, because you want to segment things. You want to make sure where the emphasis is and what's being reflected and so forth. Right here, they are missing a lot of commas, right? If I were to say, Tamid yeh kochav katan she'ya'ir lecha, comma, et atzmecha, comma, et haderech habaita. So you know in this order, all three things are relating to this kochav katan that's there for you, right? There will always be this small star there that is lighting up your, not just yourself, but the way home. Okay, in English, as you see, look at the English. Even in the dark hours of the night, there will always be a small star that will light up for you, yourself, the way home. If you look at it in English, it's not going to make sense, at least at face value. When you look at it in Hebrew and you understand the relation between the words and the order of the words are specifically mixed, right? And to reflect the flexibility of Hebrew and also the importance of the object here, right? The object being the kochav katan. Because you are ultimately the subject of this song. How am I going to get out of depression? It's giving you an option here, this kochav katan. Okay. Tamid ze achi chashuch lifnei hazeicha. We can understand this as its own sentence. It's always the darkest before the dawn. Okay. Another parallel to that initial part about the kochav katan. Million rakavot doharot ad Australia. A million trains race to Australia. מחפש רחוק את מה שנמצא לך, מתחת לאף, כל משול זה מדליה, קם ונופל, אבל בדרך שלך. It's absolutely beautiful. Again, it's missing punctuation, and it's playing with word order. So again, what's important here? What's to focus on for yourself to letset medikaon, to get out of depression, right? Million rakavot doharot ad Australia. A million trains are racing to Australia or towards Australia, right? Meaning that you're looking all over the place. Mechapes rachok et ma shenimtza lecha. Searching afar for what is already inside you. Right? These million trains are racing, looking for what's already inside you. Mitachat la'af, under your nose, comma, right? And then comes another line. So it's both playing with the time, with the meter, but also with the word order. Mechapes rachok et ma shenimtza lecha mitachat la'af can be thought of as one thought. Even though it's two separate lines in the lyrics of the song, מחפש רחוק את מה שנמצא לך מתחת לאף. You search far, or you are searching afar for what's already under your nose. Comma, or pause. כל מכשול זה מדליה. every trap is a medallion or a trophy. קם ונופל אבל בדרך שלך. Again, if you didn't understand the word order, and full admission, I didn't at first, I would think because he's asking what gets you out of depression, I didn't understand this part, right? מתחת לאף, כל מכשול זה מדליה, קם ונופל אבל בדרך שלך. It's all one big line, but you need to find the pauses and the word order to make it understood. We already said, מחפש רחוק את מה שנמצא לך מתחת לאף. You look afar for what's already inside you or under your nose, pause or comma. כל מכשול זה מדליה. Every trap is a medallia, a medallion or trophy. קם ונופל אבל בדרך שלך. קם ונופל is referring to מכשול, the trap. It's not referring to you, right? Every trap is a trophy. They arise, come, ונופל, fall down, אבל בדרך שלך, right? Traps rise and fall throughout life, and always, אבל בדרך שלך, and always in your path. The question is, what do you do, לצאת מהדיכאון? What are you doing to get out of depression? Okay, this is, again, using poetry, which always has that poetic license, not just of metaphors and the language it uses, but also the structure. And the structure is very much part of Hebrew, not just in poetry like this, but in everyday speak. Like I said, you can speak in Hebrew, starting a sentence with the object. So long as all the other things are there to indicate it's the object, you can start with that. Again, they're talking about things that are the solution to getting you out of depression. Okay, and then it goes again with a whole bunch of different ways to get out that mimic the first line of the sentence, right? So I just want to play, I don't think we have time to play the whole song. What I do want to show you is one of the examples of this song that I'm sure you're very familiar with if you're on social media. Just for a quick and important break, but you know this song, you've heard it multiple times. You're going to hear the chorus very quickly, and we're going to look at it, through YouTube. As you see, it's already got 13 million views, and it's only been up for 5 months. And on YouTube, when songs are used in shorts, as you see here on the right-hand side, shorts remixing this video, I can click on any of these, and you'll see they have 586,000 views, 26,000 views. We're just going to look at this one really quick because I know you know this song.
גם בשעות החשוכות של הלילה תמיד יהיה כוכב קטן שיעיר לך את עצמך, את הדרך הביתה. תמיד זה הכי חשוך טובים. גם בשעות החשוכות של הלילה תמיד יהיה כוכב קטן שיעיר לך את עצמך, את הדרך הביתה. תמיד זה הכי חשוך טובים.
Okay, just want to show you that really quick clip. You've heard this song, I'm sure, multiple times. I'll send you the link for it. But again, using, oh, it's going to keep playing. Unless I turn it off. Hold on. Okay. Really beautiful song, and a really great example of how important word order is to understand the meaning of what it's trying to say, even if you get the majority of it. But again, to illustrate how important word order is in Hebrew, because it can be very flexible. And that can be very challenging for those of us who are learning Hebrew anew, and we're not used to a language that isn't subject, verb, object. Right? If you are a native English speaker and you don't speak many other languages, anything that isn't subject, verb, object feels like, those of you who are familiar with the Star Wars films, it's Yoda speaking, where it's in all sort of mishmashed order. Hebrew is a great example of it can be. And so how do we find the order that makes sense to us? By simply diagramming out the subject, verb, and object. We're going to look at another option, another example right now, and we did a class several months ago, last year it would have been already, Looking at a very important phenomenon in Israeli culture, which is participating in Eurovision. Eurovision is an annual song contest that is put on by the European Broadcasting Union. Israel, by being a member of the European Broadcasting Union, is allowed to participate in it. It has since 1972 or 1973. It has won 4 times. It's also a big deal. It's a form of cultural diplomacy for Israel. Israel, in many ways, is both Middle Eastern but also European in its style and aesthetics, and so it's also being a part of our neighbors. I mean, being good neighbors. There are also other members from the Middle East included in it, and a lot of the songs that Israel has used are, again, because its cultural diplomacy is also showcasing Israel on an international stage. It's a very popular show around the world. It is not popular in the United States because the United States doesn't participate in it, and it's also, in some ways, very campy and kitschy, which again may not be everyone's cup of tea. But in Israel, at least for many years, it was afforded a big status. And one of the biggest hits that came out of it, Israel didn't win with this song, but it was a song that's still thought of as a very patriotic and national song. You'll hear quite a lot, and we're going to hear an example of it in a little bit in a very different tone, is the upbeat song called Kan. We looked at 2 different songs from the 1980s with Eurovision last year. We're going to look at the entry from 1991, which is Kan, because the lyrics go along with what we've been talking about with word order. What is the word order? How do we know the word order? By looking at words so that we can better understand what's going on. And we see already in the very first sentence a mishmash of the word order that isn't what we find as our comfort zone for many of us, subject, verb, object. Kan beti po ani noladeti. So first off, just looking at this one sentence, if I didn't know any of the words here, but I had an inkling what was the verb, I'd find it at the end of the sentence. Noladeti is the verb in this sentence. Everything else is the subject and object and some modifiers. If I was writing this again in subject, verb, object form, right? Ani noladeti kan beti, kan bebeti. I would have to add another sentence, another preposition in there, but I was born in this house. Here, I was born in this house. But instead, this is the name of the song is Kan, here. It's emphasizing the singer's connection to the land of Israel. Kan beti po ani noladti. Here, my house, here, I was born. Right? In English, that makes no sense, but in Hebrew, it makes a lot of sense, both because of the way the words fit together, and second, because they're not in the typical subverb object order, you can play around with it. And again, it's emphasizing what's coming at the beginning, or where's the emphasis in the sentence? It's kan, right? It's here. And how is here being manifested? Beti, right? Noladati, ani noladati bebeti. I was born in my house, or I was born in this house. Ani noladati babait, azeh. Either of which the house is the object, not the subject. And by that definition, it would come at the end of the sentence. Here, it's flipped. The object, beti, right, which emphasizes the kan, the here-ness, where I am, is at the beginning of the sentence. We're focusing on how kan is emphasized. Again, it's playing with word order to emphasize kan, the name of the song. Again, how patriotic these songs are really testifies to how important this is seen in Israeli society to compete on an international level, right? And then it continues to explain where Beiti is. Ba mishor asher asfatayam, on the plain which is by the coast. Kan chaverim itam gadalti. Again, we're playing around with word order. Kan achaverim itam gadalti. If I was saying this in everyday standard Hebrew, or at least in our way that we normally associate with word order, gadalti im achaverim sheli kan. I grew up with my friends here. Okay, but instead, the verb, which is conjugated for me, I grew up, comes at the end. What's important here is the here again and the friends with whom I grew up. Playing around with the word order to emphasize a different aspect of it. Ve'en li shum makom acher ba'olam. This sentence is a quote unquote normal word order, right? En li shum makom acher ba'olam, and I have no other place in the world. Okay. Kan beti po ani sichakti. Here in my house, I played. Okay, but you see, kan beti po ani sichakti. Here in this house, here I played is how you would translate this literally. But here is my house in which I played. And we're again emphasizing beti because the next sentence modifies it. Ba shfela asher al gav hahar, on the lowlands next to the mountain. Kan min ham be'er shatiti mayim. Here from the well I drank water. Again, focusing on the here and the object which is connected to what I am doing. I drank water from the well, which is here. But the well which is here comes at the beginning. Vishatalti deshe bamidbar. This, again, this makes sense. Shatalti deshe bamidbar. Shatalti is both the subject and the verb because it's conjugated. I planted deshe, grass, bamidbar, in the desert. Okay, and then here comes the chorus. Kan noladati, kan nalduli yeladai. Here I was born. Here my children were born. Kan baniti et beti. Here I built my house. Bishtei yadai, with my two hands. Kan gamata iti v'chan kol elef yedidai. Here you're also here with me, and here are all 1,000 of my friends. Ve'achrei shanim alpaim sof lindudai. And after 2,000 years, an end to my wanderings. Again, it's playing with word order, and we're running out of time, so I can't go through all this. But by emphasizing the kan, it's emphasizing the object that is the result of your own actions. So that in the other ones as well, okay? I want to show you, before I answer questions, because I see we have a couple in the Q&A, I'm going to show you one last video clip that has the lyrics to this, but also helps illustrate what I'm talking, the importance of this song in Israeli society, and it's a great preview for next week's class. See if you can understand what it's talking about. If you can't, don't worry about it. I'll explain.
במישור אשר על שפת הים, כאן החברים איתם גדלתי, ואין לי שום מקום אחר בעולם, אין לי שום מקום אחר בעולם. כאן נולדתי, כאן נולדו לי ילדיי, כאן בניתי את ביתי בשתי ידיי, כאן גם אתה איתי וכאן כל אלף ידידיי, ואחרי שנים 2,000 סוף לנדודיי.
אין לנו שום מקום אחר בעולם, אז בואו נדאג לו. וב-27 בפברואר נצא להצביע בבחירות לרשויות המקומיות. יחד מצביעים, יחד משפיעים.
בעולם.
Right, it was an ad using the lyrics to the song in a much somber, sadder, slower tempo than the original. The original is much more upbeat. But number one, everyone knows the lyrics because it affords that place in Israeli society. And they're emphasizing the kan, right? Ki ein li shum makom acher ba'olam, because I have no other place in the world. It's emphasizing that after October 7th and leading up to, in 2 weeks' time, the nationwide municipal elections, right? That in 2 weeks from tomorrow, in fact, all Israelis will go to the polls to elect their local municipal leaders, both mayors, heads of councils, as well as their council members themselves. And the idea is to use the song to connect everyone together in the here, right? In the idea of focusing on the kan. Right? So again, playing around with word order, both to emphasize things and then reverse engineering it, seeing what words, understanding what are the order of words, whether it's because it's, for example, the conjugation of a verb, or there's a preposition, like in the example of imi ata medaber or ani medaber ita, understanding what are the different words that make up a sentence to get to its meaning, both the literal meaning, but also what is it trying to communicate to me, right? Because language is about communication. What is it trying to communicate to me when the object comes at the beginning of a sentence and someone is speaking to me like that? Etauga hayeled kana, right? Why are they emphasizing that the boy bought the cake as opposed to perhaps something else? Maybe it's all sorts of things, right? But the point is to focus on the order of words, how we can diagram it just like I showed you using highlighters in this case, or underlining, or however you work it, to better translate, but also to better understand what someone's trying to say. Let me answer some questions, and then as promised, I'm going to give you next week's topic and a really great update. If you wrote the boy bought my cake, would this throw off subject, verb, object, or just changes to cake? Great question. It would not change the order, because object, a direct object, right, is simply what's the recipient. So that the boy bought my cake still works. It would still be Yeled kana et ha'uga sheli. It's still the same thing. Sheli is just a modifier of et ha'uga. Think of it like extra toppings or extra dressing on something. The something is still there. The object is still there, right? So it doesn't change the word order whatsoever. It still is subject, verb, object. If you say hayeled kana et ha'uga sheli, right? Just as if I were to say hayeled kana et ha'uga hagdola, right? If I add anything to the end of after uga, it's just modifying uga. It's not changing anything. It's just giving more description of what the uga is. So if it was a big cake, hayeled kana et ha'uga hagdola. Hayeled kana et ha'uga sheli, bought my cake. So instead of the cake, it's my cake. But this word order would stay exactly the same. You could also say et ha'uga sheli hayeled kana, right? The sheli, the gdola, whatever is modifying the uga here, will still come in the same order, right? In Hebrew, adjectives come after, or modifiers come after the noun. Okay, great question. But yes, it doesn't change the order. How does that work if both words are masculine or feminine? Then again, there's still context that's going to be there, whether it's prepositions, whether it's just understanding what each word means. Can you say ani medaber ima? No. In modern Hebrew, im gets conjugated to iti, itra, ita, ito, itach, itanu, and so forth. Is it correct that whatever comes in the first in the sentence gets the emphasis? The way I would answer that to you is is what you speak, what you choose to put the emphasis on. It's both word order, as you saw in these samples, but also where I put the emphasis. Hu kana et ha'uga. Et ha'uga hu kana. Right? It's where you also emphasize which word you emphasize as well as the word order. I would say it's both. More questions. Do the verbs, subject, and indirect object in Hebrew change in the sentence order based on if it's in the past tense, future tense, present tense? Great question. There isn't as much of a question about this in present tense, right? Because present tense, we all know how to conjugate present tense. That's usually the first thing that we learn, right? So if we say medaber, medaber, medaberet, medabrim, medabrot, the verb needs the subject before it, whether it's a pronoun like ani or a subject like the boy. So in that case, usually it's going to be subject, verb, object. When we get to past tense, future tense, that's where you're going to start seeing some alternatives. It's not always the case. You will see some alternatives in present tense, but that's a great question. Will you teach us more songs? I love teaching Hebrew and Israeli identity and culture through music. We'll do it at least once a month, I promise. Can you comment on when to use zo versus ze, or point me in a direction where to find this? I've asked several sabas, all of whom basically said they don't know either, then which sounds right. We'll do a future class on it, but basically they're right. There is no difference between zo and zot. It's really what sounds right. And you get, once you see the pattern and see it written out, it makes sense rather than being a stalwart rule. Why is it pronounced noladati instead of noladti? Noladati is just, first off, it's easier to say because the DT in both Hebrew and in other languages isn't always a normal consonant combination, but that's also the way the song is pronounced, is sung. Kan noladati, right? They also want to fit a certain meter there. So instead of saying kan noladti, where the D and the T sort of get mushed together, kan noladati, right? So they added an extra syllable in there to emphasize it. Please clarify the use of kan and po. They both mean here. Though they're both used in the same way here. I will definitely send the links to both these tracks, no problem. Why does imi and ita sometimes have an ayin and sometimes an aleph? Great question. Let me share that to you. Is it here? Hold on. Let me get rid of this. Okay, when we conjugate im with an ayin, meaning with, it takes on an aleph at the beginning. You see it in the line for this song. Kan gamata iti. Here you are also with me. Or here also you are with me, if I'm going to translate it literally. Iti is simply with me. Okay, it changes the spelling, yes, but iti is nothing other than with me. There are other words in Hebrew, by the way, that sound like et, but they're spelled different and they mean different things. We have, as we talked about in our past classes on spelling, and please look at those classes on YouTube, Hebrew has a lot of homophones, words that sound similar but are spelled differently and mean different things. But the conjugation or the declension of im, meaning with me, with you, with so forth, is spelled with an aleph at the beginning. Modern Hebrew, right? Because it's iti, itra, itach. In biblical Hebrew, it's imi, imcha, imech, imanu, so forth. But in modern Hebrew, it's it, itra, and so forth. When doing masculine and feminine, can a subject be plural and masculine and the object be feminine? Absolutely. Hayeladim konim et ha'uga. There, we use the same thing as we had before. Or hayeladim kanu et ha'uga. The boys bought the cake. Et ha'uga kanu hayeladim. Right? Immediately in the past tense, it will be discernible who it's referring to, but it's hayeladim in the present tense. Hayeladim ochlim et ha'uga. The boys eat the cake, or the boys eat a cake, as your example here. Hayeladim ochlim uga. The verb is connected to the subject, not the object. You see a couple questions about im. We're going to go back. We have a class on prepositions on YouTube. I think we've done it at least once or twice. It's all there. We'll go through it again. But basically, again, modern Hebrew, if you want to say with me, it's et. It is not imi. You can say imi. It is very antiquated in modern Hebrew. And I know that's very easy, excuse me, when you're learning Hebrew because im is with, and if I just add the usual suffix pronoun at the end, I get the word imi. And it's in biblical Hebrew, so it must be right? Modern Hebrew, it's et. There aren't many of those where the root word changes like that when it's goes through declension, but that happens to be one of them. Okay, number one, Toda rabba, thank you all for joining. Number two, next week's class, as I showed in that, I said that second song was a preview for about local elections. Next week, we are going to do A to Z of Aleph ad Taf, as we say here in Israel, of local elections on February 27th. All Israelis, regardless of if they live in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, north, south, east, west, will all go to the polls to elect their local officials. We're going to talk about what that means, how the country is broken up on a local level, right? We know how to vote on a national level for Knesset, and we've talked about before. Now we're going to talk about local elections. Number one, what are we voting for? What are the issues that local government deals with on a regular basis? How to find out who's running and what platforms they stand on, wherever you are in the country. What happens on election day? Big hint, folks, it's a national day. It's a national holiday. You don't go to work on February 27th this year. And how to vote and where to find out where to vote. All the basics of how to vote in Israel. Also what marks local elections, and we're going to talk about this as well, is that if you are a permanent resident in Israel, meaning that you have residency status here, but you are not a citizen, and that's often the case of spouses from abroad and people in the process of making aliyah and have a certain type of visa as opposed to having made aliyah, you are eligible to vote in local elections. So this is relevant to a lot of us, understanding how do we vote in Israel in general and what does a local election mean in general, whether it's here in Tel Aviv voting for the mayor and the city council, or in a yishuv somewhere else in the country and voting for on a much smaller level. We're going to talk about all that next week. And as I promised, we have a great, exciting update for all of you. Let me open it up if I can. So we have, is it here? It is. So Cafe Oleh has been around since basically 2017, starting in person, going online with the start of the pandemic in 2020, coming out of the pandemic, slowly starting to create new opportunities in person in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, with thoughts about going even farther beyond the two. And now we are excited to launch, starting next week, Cafe Oleh Conversations. Starting next week, we are going to be offering a smaller, more intimate, conversation-based class based on what we do here on Monday nights. So if you are interested in getting further help in your speaking and listening skills, if you're looking to practice what we learn on Mondays in a smaller group, but also having to speak, this is your great opportunity. Save the date. It's going to be for the next 4 Wednesdays at 8 p.m., same time that we meet here for Cafe Oleh, but on Wednesdays. And they're going to reflect the class that we do that Monday. Okay, so whether we are talking about next week, we're going to talk about local elections. So the first class that week will be how to talk politics. The week after that, we're going to talk about service numbers and emergency issues, how to complain. We're going to talk about what are you listening to and watching and reading. And then as we get closer to the next big holiday, Purim, how to make plans with friends, whether that's for the holiday, whether that's for Shabbat, or just in general, right? So you're going to have an opportunity both to practice what we learn here together and practice in general and meet in a much smaller place and get feedback on our speaking and listening skills. You will get, the way it's going to work is we will do as much as we can to get this lesson and the vocabulary that goes with it uploaded and sent to you as quickly as possible after our Monday class. So you have Tuesday and Wednesday daytime to practice and look over what we studied. And on Wednesday, we'll use the same vocabulary from that week to break out into smaller groups and get some time to practice, and actually get to see you here on camera and actually get to talk with me and each other, which is going to be absolutely amazing for all of us. It's not going to be recorded, so it'll be off the record. We hope we get all sorts of different voices and different people joining. You don't have to attend on Monday in order to attend on Wednesday, and vice versa, but we're really looking forward listening to you and what you want, and seeing that there is this interest in having more conversation opportunities, and being able to provide it to you. So stay tuned. You will get more information in your email in the next day about signing up for our pilot classes. And until I see you all next week, toda rabah, thank you all so much for joining. Next week, like I said, we're going to be talking about local elections. And until then, להתראות. See you all very soon.